Welcome back.
And then we'll go right into council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of the town of Essex, we acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and of the Huron-Wyandot peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial.
And for the national anthem. Keeps going off. Thank you. We'll go right to Rob for a closed meeting report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is to advise that council did meet in closed session earlier this evening at 4:30 p.m. The purpose of the discussion was to discuss litigation or potential litigation matters involving the municipality. And council is permitted to do so in closed session by virtue of section 239 2E of the Municipal Act. And at that meeting, council did provide administration with regarding that litigation matter. And that's the extent of my report, Mr. Mayor.
Rob, is there any conflict amongst council members here tonight? Okay, seeing none, I'll need a motion for the adoption of the published agenda for.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, pardon me. Hold on one sec. I'll go right to Rob. He's got an addition. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of items. Earlier in the day, Councillor Verbeek provided or asked for consideration for council to add what she called an emergency motion, but it might be better suited if the chair is agreeable, it might be better suited to business item, and assuming that's minor and urgent as defined under the procedural bylaw. And the item that I would suggest be considered for new business from the Councillor Verbeek is looking for a motion that council send a letter to the federal government to demand completion of the 94 calls to action put forth in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And then secondly, Deputy Mayor Milosh has also asked for the chair and council's consideration as a new business for discussion on using community centers for heat relief, during extreme heat alerts.
To council, I haven't got a problem with it, but if we can have a motion with those additions to adopt the published agenda, please. Councillor Bondi and Councillor Verbeek, all in favor of that motion? It's carried. Thank you. We'll go right to the adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting, June 21st, please, and I'll need a mover on this one. I get a mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor? That one's carried. And another one for the special meeting for May 10th. I'll need a mover on that one, please. Councillor Bowman, Councillor Guerin, all in favor of that one? That one's carried. No public presentations. Unfinished business, or I don't think there's any unfinished business. We'll go right to reports from administration. I'll turn it over to Rob now. He can continue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 10.1 on this evening's agenda is a report entitled Economic Development 2021-08, re Essex Tourism Events Fund Applications for receipt, and looking for council to approve the distribution of $1,000 of funding to the Rotary Club of Harrow from the Essex Tourism Events Fund, and also the approval of the distribution of $1,000 of funding to Heritage Colchester.
Mover on this one, please. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Bjork. Any questions? All in favor of this one? That one's carried. Thank you.
10.2 on this evening's agenda is Drainage 2021-08, reappointment of an engineer under Section 76 of the Drainage Act to provide updated cost sharing for the LaPointe drain for receipt, and that council appoint Root Engineering pursuant to Section 76 of the Drainage Act.
Mover on this one, Deputy Mayor Malash. Seconder. Councillor Bjorkman, any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried. Oh, pardon me. Oh, hold on one sec. You were just a little bit late. Did you have a question, Councillor Verbeek? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a curiosity again as a first-term councillor. So what happens if we say, no, we don't agree with the hiring an engineer on this report because it was just, one was done, I think it said like 10 years ago or something like that. And I'm just curious, what's next steps if we did? Not that I'm not doing it, we already passed it, but I'm just curious. What's the procedure? What happens then? If we didn't support the recommendation?
Yeah, we already supported the recommendation, so. You know what, Councillor Verbeek, you're just a little bit late getting your hand up, but you know, let us, if I can get an answer for you, I will. I'll call you tomorrow with an answer. Is that okay?
Yes, it was just a curiosity. When I was reading through today, that just came like, what if we didn't, was just a question. Okay. Yeah, sure.
I will give you a call tomorrow for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Point 3 on the agenda this evening is Development Services 2021-03, re-amended development charges bylaw for receipt, and that bylaw 2043 being a bylaw to amend 1850 respecting development charges, be ready first, second, and third time, and be finally passed this evening. And I believe Mr. Mayor, Ms. Chadwick, Director of Development Services, is looking to speak to this matter for council.
Go ahead, Lori, if you're there. Go ahead, Lori. I see you there. Go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Council. Unfortunately, I don't see that Ms. Neal is available. She's our consultant with Watson and Associates. We did forward her the details to the meeting invite, so I will take it from here. The development charges, as we heard back or the bylaw rather, as we heard back in May, does require some amendments as legislated under several pieces of legislation at the provincial level. So back in May, we presented council with those details and provided some supporting documentation. This bylaw is now being presented tonight for 3 readings, which means then that effective immediately we'll be able to impose those changes, or rather, with with respect to the 10% reduction for, or deduction rather, for certain services, instilling payment plans for certain applications. And then of course, the mandatory exemption for new secondary or second dwelling units, which are referred to as ancillary units. I wanted to just take you to, if we could, a point of clarification. We've done some digging. We've spoken to our consultant. We have also internally met together to clarify a question on what we refer to as paying ourselves back or funding our reserve when there is a development charge that is exempt under the Act, as well as when there's a development charge that the town chooses to exempt under the bylaw. Over the course of this past month, we've uncovered that the only time where the town doesn't need to pay itself back or fund that development charge exemption is if it is our own facility that we are developing. For example, the fire hall, Fire Station 2, I believe it is, that's something that a development charge, if it was imposed, we would not need to pay ourselves back. So with that said, second dwelling units, although exempt legislatively, there is an impact on the municipal services, whether it's hard or soft. And so I wanted to be able to clarify. I see that Ms. Jarusevich, our acting director of corporate services, is here as well to be able to speak to that. The development charge is exempt. However, we still do need to pay ourselves back. So what we've uncovered here as well is that at this time, we anticipate that the impact financially in 2021 is quite minimal, but that we will work together between our departments to be able to forecast the impacts in 2022. Given the timeframe for implementation of second dwelling units, and as you know, it's still undergoing some changes to our zoning bylaw, we don't anticipate that it's going to be a huge impact. I also noticed that Ms. Neal has joined us. Thank you, Nancy. So Kate and Nancy, is there anything that we want to drive home before council makes that motion to hopefully approve those amendments?
If I can just speak up through the chair. You know, the main portion of doing this DC update is to embrace the legislative changes in your bylaw, which includes increasing the charges slightly because the province did remove that 10% mandatory deduction that was required from the calculations from some of the services. So in increasing the charges for that, it actually helps to reduce what you will have to fund from other sources in the future for all of the projects related to the Parks and Recreation and Library and some of the studies that are included and are funded from the DCs. So, you know, on one side, yes, you will have to fund, you know, the exemptions that are mandatorily in there or exempt, but for the properties you can impose the charge on, this update helps to provide you a bit more revenue to come directly from the growth that is benefiting from the works that need to be put in place.
Thank you, Nancy. Kate, did you have anything to add?
Yes, through the chair. So we have started doing this as part of our annual budgeting process. So what we do is look at past trends on, you know, what types of developments might have been waived, and we incorporate it into the operating budget. And what we do then is do a transfer to the DC reserve so that when the infrastructure outlay occurs, it's not a funding shock. The money's already set aside through the DC reserve.
Kate, any other questions from council? Deputy Mayor Malash, go ahead.
Thank you, through your worship, to Kate. Kate, so how would we forecast the number of units, second dwelling units, that we think would happen or occur in the community, you know, in any given year?
So that one might be a joint answer with Lori and I. It's tough, right? Because it's a new piece. We haven't seen it before. So speaking with Nancy, the best thing to do would be to look at past practice, which we don't have. When budgeting comes, we'll have to look at comparable, size and comparator municipalities to try and come up with a prediction. And you guys saw from last, year to date, the report that Lori brought forward for the waived. It can be tough, right? We don't know that figure for sure, but I think that working with Nancy and Lori and looking at the applications and the uptake can get us a starting point.
Additional question, Mr. Mayor? So the other thing is too, I wasn't quite sure on the development fees. Which development fees is it that we have to pay into? Is it just the water and the sewage, or what are we paying? Is it the full scale development charge? Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it is, through the chair. Yeah, you have to make up for any component. If you discount the rates, you have to make up the discount from the amount you're actually imposing versus what the calculated full rate is for all the services. Now, you don't collect currently for water. You do collect for wastewater development charges. That would be funded through your wastewater rates. All of the other services, if there's exemptions or discounts that pertain to those, roads, parks, recreation, etc., those have to be made up from your tax base.
And then my next question is probably to Nancy, if you mind, Lori, if I can get this question in, and then has the province, is there any backlash from any of the other communities on this as far as how the province has set this up?
There is a lot of concern through the mayor, yet there is a lot of concern, especially in very high growth municipalities and municipalities who have universities and colleges where they see,
Yeah,
a
I can
lot
see that.
of the secondary units that are being proposed all the time. They have some pretty major concerns about how just this new mandatory exemption is going to affect their bottom lines for sure. The other mandatory exemptions, they've always been there. Discretionary exemptions are always up to each and every council. But mandatory or discretionary, you have to make up the difference.
Okay, and is this just on new construction? Let's say you have a house and you've already built the house and so on. You're just splitting it so that it now more people live in the house. You'd have to have development charges on that as well?
Sorry, through the mayor, are you talking about a renovation within the house or adding like an official apartment in the basement, for example?
Correct. Designating a portion of the house for rental.
Yeah, if then you're adding a second unit,
Okay.
that you would typically, if it's in an existing home, you are creating a second unit. You can and always have been able to add 2 additional apartments in a single family house. That has always been a mandatory deduction that you've had to fund in the past. That has been there for years, and 1 additional unit in any other type of residential home, a semi-detached, a townhouse, an apartment. There's always been a mandatory exemption for 1 additional unit that's exempt. What's new this time around is you can get that exemption at the time of a new build. So a new single family is being proposed at the same time they can have that second unit. And it doesn't have to be within the existing single family home. It can be separate from it, but on the same property, and it's still exempt. And that's the new added discretionary or mandatory exemption that's been added. In the past, if it was a new build, the municipalities would charge a single family home rate and an apartment rate and get both DCs. Now you can only charge that single family rate or that townhouse rate, etc. So you're missing 1 unit, the revenue from that.
Okay. Thank you.
But existing has always had the exemptions.
Yeah, I think the rest of my discussion comes when we talk about second dwelling units. I'm good. Thank you. Lori, I don't know if you had something that you wanted to add. I cut you off kind of.
Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Deputy Mayor. The additional comment I just wanted to make is in reference to the onus on the municipality, in that one of the pieces of legislation that we all have heard about and heard before is the More Homes, More Choice Act. And with that, it's making things easier for the resident, but it puts the strain on the municipality. And so it gives more homes and more options for citizens and residents of the province of Ontario, but the municipality ends up feeling that burden. When I say burden, it's that charge that we would normally collect for increasing our level of service, whether it's recreation, programming, fire, or physical services as well. So on one hand, we do see it as a benefit to a resident and to a homeowner who is seeking on building, for example, that granny suite in the back. But again, it's that kind of pressure on the municipality, and which is why our tight-knit group here in development services is working with finance. More and more I see every day is the collective teamwork and brainstorming on how are we going to forecast. So I'm glad that Kate, we're already on it and thinking about how are we going to forecast. So I think Nancy's going to end up getting a call towards the end of the year or before the end of the year to help us forecast what that might look like for 2022. Of course, real applications that are received through Rita Jabour, our manager of planning services, as well as through to Kevin Carter, our CBO. Any applications or building permits that we receive, the actuals will help us, but at least it's something as a stab in the dark, essentially. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Lori. To me, this is a shock. I mean, in 2021, I don't think we're going to have impact in 2021, but 2022, we could see a big bottom line difference here. And I just can't see the general taxpayer coming out and have to pay for these development charges. I don't know. This is something we're going to have to look at and try to fight this. I mean,
so
I don't see how the province can come down and bring this forward. I mean, it's not fair. It's not fair. So I know you're working on it, but I don't know. I don't agree with it at all. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Somebody can build a second dwelling, but yet have somebody move in and the general taxpayer is paying for it. So anyways, Laura, you had something to add, and then I'll ask.
Just on that, Mr. Mayor, I think it's something for us to consider even as a development charge bylaw itself, the entire bylaw. You know, we have been, as a municipality, making decisions above and beyond, and I guess outside of the legislative exemptions that are mandated under the Act. And do we as a municipality still want to see moving forward exemptions for big projects such as industrial and commercial? Whereas to give you perspective, in a single family dwelling, for a single family dwelling, that development charge could be $15,000. The second dwelling unit could be as little as, let's say, $5,000 or less. Those exemptions, they will add up. You're absolutely right. It's going to be an impact to us. But at the same time, we've also decided as a municipality to waive more than just what the province mandates. So it's maybe something to consider down the road in the next 3 years at least, before our bylaw is up for reconsideration. Thank you.
Anybody else from council? It's quite an issue here, but anyways. Anybody else? I don't see anybody else. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for the report. I think it needs a lot of work. I mean, I don't know what we're going to do there, but I don't want to see a big impact on the bottom line. I'm not worried. Like I say, I'm not worried about 21, but 22, we could see a huge bottom line difference with the second dwelling. So thank you. To accept the report, please.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, and move with the bylaw if that's council's wish.
Move the bylaw forward. Councillor Bowman, seconder. Councillor Verbeek, all in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 10.4 on this evening's agenda is Community Services 2021-06, re St. Peter's ACHS College School lease of Lions Hall for receipt and that council approve entering into an agreement with the All Canadian Hockey School Incorporated for lease space at Harold Lyons Hall located at 206 McAfee Street for a one-year term commencing on the first day of August with an option to renew for an additional 2 years, subject to the general terms and conditions outlined in bylaw 2044, and that bylaw 2044 accordingly be ready first, second, third time and be.
Thank you, Rob. Could I have a mover on this one here, please? Councillor Bjorkman and Deputy Mayor Malash, any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried.
10.5 is Community Services 2021-07, Special Events Resource Team July update for Council's receipt for information this evening.
Mover, please. Councillor Vandendolen and Councillor Bowman. Any questions on this one? All in favor? Carried.
10.6 on this evening's agenda is Capital Works and Infrastructure 2021-09 for receipt, and that council, King Queen traffic signal replacement for receipt, and that council approved the additional expenditure for the replacement of the traffic signals at the King and Queen Street intersection in the amount of $170,820 as part of the Harold Streetscape project.
Thank you, Rob. Could I have a mover on this one, please? Councillor Bondi and Councillor Vandendolen. Any questions? Councillor Bondi, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our Director of Infrastructure. Just wondering what the new life expectancy is and what the warranty is, please.
Go ahead, Kevin, if you can answer that.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. Typically, our traffic signals have a useful life, I believe, of around 30 to 35 years. And the signals will be covered under the warranty of the Harold Streetscape, so it'll be a one-year warranty.
And any other questions? Deputy Mayor Malash.
Just a general comment. I think it's great that we were able to pull it in under under budget costs that we had. Like, so the bid on the whole plan was under cost, and we were able to pull this project in with some of the excess funds that were available because of the plan coming in under cost of what we had actually budgeted. So I think this is a wise thing to move forward, and obviously, and rather than spending $70,000 on the old traffic light, and then in 5 to 7 years, be putting something new in at that point in time. Fantastic that we can do this while we're already upgrading and making downtown Harold beautiful. So kudos to the team for making this happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. Any other questions? All in favor? Carried.
.7 is Legal and Legislative Services 2021-13, appeal hearing with respect to a dangerous dog declaration and issuance of a notice to muzzle for receipt, and that council grant an exemption from the requirements of the animal control bylaw as it relates to the composition of the appeal committee, and direct that the members of the appeal committee for the upcoming hearing shall be comprised of 3 members of the general public to be appointed by council.
Could I have a mover on this one, please? Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Bjorkman. Any questions? All in favor? Carried.
10.8 this evening, Legal and Legislative Services 2021-14, fireworks bylaw review and updates for receipt, and that bylaw 2011 be ready first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and that council direct administration to review the feasibility of an appropriate fireworks display. And if it's all right with you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just do a quick walk.
No problem, Rob, go ahead.
So this was really yet another good example of the collaborative approach that we took at the town here with respect to this particular bylaw review. Bylaw enforcement, the fire department, and legislative services were all involved in the process. Clearly, the current fireworks bylaw 124 was passed just after amalgamation, and it was pretty evident from reviewing it that it was outdated. It really didn't address a lot of the health and safety concerns that you see in a lot of the other fireworks bylaws that are out there today. And it was impractical as far as its application, both for residents and bylaw enforcement. So it really did need another look and a review. And so that's what we have before council this evening. Some of the key aspects, as I summarize and go through some of the key points in the report, regarding sale of fireworks, this new bylaw expands the list of holidays which fireworks can be sold on. So U.S. Independence Day, Civic Holiday, Labor Day have been added. And as well, it also extends the period of time that those fireworks can be sold by licensed retailers. So that was increased from a 7-day period to 10 days. No magic in that number, just we looked to see what was consistent with a lot of the other bylaws out there, a lot of the current bylaws out there. Possession of fireworks, a general provision prohibiting possession of fireworks under the age of 18. A prohibition against firecrackers and flying lanterns. That really wasn't in the old bylaw, and so that's been addressed now. And then types of fireworks. The proposed bylaw now makes a distinction between 3 types of fireworks or classes, which are defined in the bylaw. Family fireworks, display or high-powered fireworks, and then pyrotechnic special effects fireworks. And so for each of those classes now, they have their own definitions, their own restrictions, and their own regulations designed to ensure safety conditions or improve safety conditions. The current bylaw, again, doesn't really make any distinctions between types of fireworks and again, doesn't provide those safety precautions or related regulations. The setting off of fireworks, so the setting off of family fireworks, again, a similar theme. The proposed bylaw expands the list of holidays that fireworks can be set off without a permit. So again, U.S. Independence Day, Civic Holiday, Labor Day, and then there's also, in addition, a period of time before and after each holiday that those fireworks can be set off without a permit. So, for example, the 3 days before and after, including on July 1st, being Canada Day, and that's just to bring more of a practical effect to it. Obviously, this was the perfect example. July 1st was in the middle of the week. July 2nd probably would have been a more reasonable date for fireworks to be set off. So this bylaw would now allow that. And then even with regulations, for example, one of the regulations is a regulation that when family fireworks are being set off, that an operating fire extinguisher be readily accessible in the immediate area. So just efforts to try to improve the safety component to that. Permitting, so permits are required for setting off the display or high-powered fireworks, so that's second class, and then also for the third class, the pyrotechnic special effect fireworks. So the permit may be granted for the purpose of celebrating the holidays on those already been identified, or on another day or time that can be approved by the fire chief. So the fire chief has some increased discretion under this particular bylaw. And really the effort here as far as the permitting, we have been using a permit application system, but it was never actually formalized into the bylaw itself. So now it's in there. Enforcement, so that would be a combination of the town's bylaw enforcement officers and the Ontario Provincial Police. There's proposed set fines as a schedule to that bylaw. The fines are, even the fines that were under the old bylaw are somewhat consistent, maybe on the lower end, slightly, lower. than maybe a few of the other municipalities out there, but the fine amounts are still the same. Better, I think, and improved is the range of potential fines are increased now. And then finally, under financial impact, one thing we found when reviewing other towns' bylaws, so we looked at Chatham, Kent, Stratford, we looked at our local municipalities, and then we also looked at, you know, what some of the bigger cities were doing. One thing that was missing from our bylaw and our application was a fee. And so that was the third part of the recommendations this evening, was to give us, give administration the ability to look into what would be the appropriate fee. We seem to see $100 seem to be an appropriate fee amount for the fact that the fire chief must process the application, ensuring all the requirements are attached, you know, as part of that permitting process. It may include a site visit to take a look at the, you know, what's proposed as the display area. So certainly a fee is recommended as part of this. And that's it. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if council has any questions.
Councillor Bowman, go ahead.
Morley, we can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Marley.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay. Something wrong with the speaker. Anyway, just a comment. Nice report, and as I said, though you couldn't hear me, great deal of groundwork went into the work towards this. The only thing I did notice that we have one of the larger fireworks companies in Ontario at K&H. I wondered if they were brought into the discussion at any point with any input from them. You know, we got input, you know, from all the legal side, but I just wondered if from the people that are out there actually doing the, especially on the pyrotechnic end of it, if that was actually looked at, and maybe it should be.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bowman, we didn't directly consult with them. They're, like you said, they're regularly involved in the permit application process, and that's one of the areas that we're looking at. The bylaw, as stated, provides us with the flexibility, maybe change some of the components of that permit application. So I think their feedback and consultation would be really important for that. And then, you know, I guess certainly as part of the consideration for the permit fee. So yeah, definitely, I take note of that.
Anybody else? Did you have something further, Councillor Bowman, or?
Just wanted to thank him for the input. I think they would be a great resource, especially in, you know, the high end stuff, you know, not the family fireworks, or maybe even there as well, but just their feedback on the work that's gone in, I think would be advantageous to us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Vandendel, I think you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, well, it was a very thorough report, but I can't help but feel that there's going to be some negative pushback from essentially taxing yet another field that we didn't used to. Like I know the bureaucratic feeling that if we process something and take an application, we have to charge a fee. But to me, it looks like just the continuing relentless push to tax every human activity under the sun. And I think it's too much and it's ridiculous. I'd like to know which other communities, I've done some research, I can't find any other community that bans firecrackers. Are there any others, and why are we doing so?
I don't have the other bylaws in front of me, but I thought Stratford and there was another municipality had provisions that ban that, and I mean it's essentially just same thing with the flying lanterns. You know, it would be more from that safety concern, but There were a couple of municipalities that, when we were reviewing a bunch of the bylaws that we came across, that did have provisions relating to that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Ogier. I no further questions. I just want to add, I think that's also bureaucratic overreach. Flying lanterns, that makes sense. I mean, you could set a house on fire 3 streets away by letting those go, but banning firecrackers because there's a potential for injury. Well, based on that logic, we should ban bicycles too and skateboards. But so I think that's too much, and I think I'm going to vote against this just for that reason. Thanks.
I'm going to go to Councillor Verbeek, then to Councillor Guerin.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It wasn't in my comments, but just to you, Councillor Vanderdolen, I think you make some good points, but I feel like part of why this is important is for the well-being of the people that are negatively affected by the fireworks. And yeah, pets for sure, but it also has a negative effect on a lot of our residents, right? So I think that by outlining the days that these are when it's going to happen and this is when it can happen is just another avenue for us to cater to and care for our community. I did want to just take this. I know this wasn't what I planned on saying, but when I listened to this, Mr. Ogier present this, the word collaborate just kept resonating with me. All the departments that came in to work on this bylaw and the last bylaw, and our staff working together. I've been recently trying to compile a list of all the wonderful things that this team, administration and council have done this term for the benefit of this community. And it's actually quite impressive. And I'm not patting myself on the back, I'm patting Team Essex, but it's because when we see our staff, our administration working on these bylaws, this one and the development one and all the others, they collaborate so well together, and they're focused on the details. And that, I think, is what's bringing us the successes. I just wanted to say that. Thank you to administration for your detail, for this bylaw and all the other ones you work really hard to and collaborate together on.
For Councillor Guerin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm glad we're having a conversation on the fireworks because it is one of the complaints that we get oftentimes is about them. Although that a lot of us love them, and I'm one of them, we do get complaints about them. So a couple of things. I have to agree. I'm not really in favor of a permit fee. The problem with the permit fee is we'll have residents coming up to the town hall to apply and doing their due diligence and following the rules. We'll have a whole host of others that won't be applying and they'll still be letting off the fireworks. So I think it's a little unfair. I'm not sure how we're going to enforce the ones that don't apply. I don't know how we enforce it now when our bylaw enforcement works, basically Monday to Friday through the day only. So a couple of things I'm wondering with the permit itself. Is there a certain amount of days in advance that a person needs to apply? Is there indications on the permit itself of where they're going to be let off? For example, can they be let off 3 feet from a neighbor's fence line or from a neighbor's house or around trees? Can they be let off, like I see in some neighborhoods, on the streets? The people letting the family fireworks off, they're regular people like you and I. We don't have any certificate or any licensing to let them off. We're just hoping we're doing it right. And we do know that there's hundreds of reported cases Canada-wide of injuries resulted by fireworks. Usually it's the misuse of them or the mishandling of them. Another concern I have is similar to our sound bylaws when we're putting on events that are going to be loud and we're looking for exemptions on noise. Should we be asking the applicants to within a radius of that location of being let off, should they be notifying the neighbors via a flyer or whatever in their door, just letting them know that, hey, on this date at this time we're going to be letting off fireworks. We expect it to last about 15-20 minutes, because we do know a lot of people. I've heard the complaints about it scares their pets, it scares their youth. some people have disorders that with the noise and such. So just wondering if that's something that we've considered. And then the other thing, I guess, would just be back to the permit fee. I mean, I don't see how we're going to charge for something like this. I mean, if the chief's going around and physically doing an inspection of each applicant's property and where they're going to be letting them off, and then that's going to be time consuming. I understand that. But if it's simply us taking an application that's already filled out and just stamping it saying, yeah, you're approved, then I don't see the need to charge for something like that. Those are my thoughts on it. It's a great discussion. Since I've been on council, every year, summertime, pretty much every weekend, I get this complaint. I think we all do. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Guerin. Before I go to you, Deputy Mayor, the chief would like to speak. So Chief, if you go ahead, then I'll go to.
All right. Thank you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Guerin. Family fireworks, there is no permit for family fireworks. They don't have to have a permit to set them off. The only fireworks that require a permit are either display or the pyrotechnics, which are large firework events. And when they do that, they have to provide a drawing of the area, the safety stuff they have. The owner has, or the person setting off the fireworks has to be licensed and carry $5 million worth of liability insurance. So for the neighborhood fireworks, we have no, and this act falls under the Explosives Act, which is a federal act, and we really have no control over that. And then to Councillor Vanderdolen, which I believe talked about firecrackers. If you go into the Explosive Act or check the Explosive Act of Canada, fireworks that are illegal in Canada include cherry bombs, snaps, M80 salutes, flash crackers, throwdown torpedoes, cigarette loads, trick matches, spirit bombs, and firecrackers. So the Explosive Act is what designates that firecrackers can't be, they're illegal to use.
Thank you, Chief, for that information. And I'll go to Rob right now, and then Deputy Mayor, I'll come to you.
Yep, just real quickly through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Guerin was speaking to concern noise and sound levels and given notice to neighbors. There isn't an explicit requirement for it, but certainly in the fire chief's toolbox, as part of issuing that permit, he could make that a condition of issuing that permit.
Go ahead.
I didn't hear the first part. Were you saying, Deputy Mayor, go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I have a couple of concerns. So in here in item 1 of the bylaw itself, it says it shall be unlawful for any person or corporation to, or it shall be unlawful, part 2, I'm sorry. It shall be unlawful for any person or corporation to set off fireworks except for the days and dates as mentioned herein. The third Monday of May being Victoria Day. There's a lot of people that don't celebrate, like my family, for instance, has in many years celebrated on the Saturday of that weekend. And if we're going to have fireworks, that's the night that we would have fireworks. So in this instance, it would be unlawful for me to have fireworks on that Saturday night before the Monday holiday. I'm just wondering if we should extend the date so that it's wrapped around that entire weekend rather than just that specific day. Also, part 2 or B, the 1st of July being Dominion Day. Well, this past week, Dominion Day was on July 1st, which was a Thursday night. And in many instances at this time of the year, it's too late to set the firecrackers off early. I've got 6 grandkids that are young kids, and I mean, they would stay up late on the Thursday night anyway, but the parents aren't going to stay up late with the kids. They may on July 3rd, because it's the weekend, and Saturday night's a little different. My grandkids were all camping out, and they had fireworks on the Saturday night when they were camping out. So I'm concerned that we're being too stringent with trying to set specific dates where people are allowed to do it. And then part C says the 31st day of December, 1999. So I think we need to drop the 1999 first of all. If we're going to, I think it's just probably a typing error on this, on what I'm seeing here. But in any case, I think that we should be a range of dates around the holiday rather than just the specific holiday. The other question I have, and somebody texted me a question here already on this, is that let's say grandma's turning 100 on August 31st, and I want to set fireworks off on like at a family party. Do we have to get a hold of the fire department to let them know we're setting fireworks off, and can we have permission, or does this something that has to go before council? What's the procedure for those instances? Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, a couple of things. In that scenario there, if it's not on one of the listed dates, they would simply need the permit to set those off on a day other than the days designated, permission of the fire chief. And so that it would be through that process. A couple other points that you had mentioned, or a few of the issues that you identified were the very issues that were a concern in the old bylaw. So yeah, a couple of things. The section 2 that you referenced, that 10-day period, that actually relates to the selling of the fireworks. The setting off of the fireworks in section 3 is restricted. For example, it's restricted to 3 days before. It depends on the holiday. So in Canada Day example, 3 days before and after, and on July 1st. For Victoria Day, for example, 3 days before and on the and on the third Monday of May, being Victoria Day. So it is somewhat more of a limited window. Definitely not that 10-day period, but that's really strictly to the sale. And then there's even the current bylaw has restrictions on the timing. So it would be from dusk until 11 p.m. If there's anything to be outside of that, again, permission would be required of the fire chief.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Sorry, just for clarification, I'm looking at this bylaw that we have attached to our agenda, bylaw number 124. Is this the old bylaw?
Yes, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Okay, okay. I was thinking that was the one we're going to. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bondi, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I really thank our administrative team for looking at this. I really would like council to have only 2 readings tonight and take another meeting and come back and pass the 3rd reading, because I don't want to revisit this next term or in the next 10 years. I want to really make sure that all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Not saying they're not, but what's happening right now is the public are being alerted to what we're doing, and we could potentially get more feedback in the next 2 weeks. So I think it's easier and more efficient for us just to have first, second reading, and if there's a couple little tweaks. For example, if the fire chief permits fireworks, say on a day after the event, say it's in Harrow, if that happens, my phone is going to blow up, right? So is there something in there if, like when the flags go up, council's notified when the flags go up, just that communication bit, maybe it's registered or something. I also don't know if the OPP were consulted. So maybe they're not on that list. I'd like to see if they were consulted. I know Mr. Levine, I did talk to him last summer about a lot of issues I was having in Harrow. I don't want to be, the fun police and rain on people's parades. I believe fireworks are something that many families enjoy. At the same time, I've had people in Harrow tell me that they want to move out of Harrow because of all the fireworks that happened last year. So I want to find balance. People are telling me, I did post this on my website and I am getting some feedback that B and C overlap, which really makes it 10 days of fireworks. That's a long time. Ken, is there something we can do about eliminating fireworks on public property? For example, this summer there was tons lit off at public property. I mean, maybe that's where we want them. I'm not sure. I'd like to have more discussion about that. And is there any regulations about where and when you can light them off? Like, we have some small properties in our towns, you know, some literally cookie cutter subdivisions. Are we allowing people just to let them up, light them up there? So I don't know. I think it's a really good conversation and I don't want to come back to it. So I would like to see council support that we table it for one more meeting to hash a few more things out if need be.
Thank you, Councillor. That's up to council. If Councillor Bondi wants to table it, so do we? You want to make that a motion to table it?
Or sorry, rather, Mayor, just have first and second reading tonight and have third reading at the next July meeting in case any other councillors want to listen to any more public feedback.
Okay, can I have a seconder on that one?
I'll support that.
Okay, Councillor Vanden, all in favor of that? Unanimous, it's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving to item 12 on the agenda. Any updates from?
For me, I haven't got anything. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, just so some of the road works that are going on, I don't know if, how many of you have driven through McGregor, but the county's done a great job in repaving the road through from the 10th County Road 10 in McGregor to the bridge over Sucker Creek, and that is just beautifully done. They are also working on County Road 20 just outside of Harrow. Hopefully that will be done soon, and we'll enjoy some nice roadway there. And that's what we're looking forward to having in downtown Harrow next year. So keep our fingers crossed everything goes accordingly.
On our town lines, they've done work on Arner too. So good. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, item 13.1, that all of the correspondence listed therein in 13.1 be received and where indicated to further share with the community.
Okay, council, I'll have a motion to do them all. And if there's one that you want to pull out, we'll pull it out. So all in favor of the correspondence? I need a move, or I need mover for first and a seconder. Councillor Bowman, Councillor Bjorkman, all in favor? It's carried. Anyone has anything to talk about? Go ahead, Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few things. I wanted to point out the Harrow and Colchester South Chamber of Commerce letter about the state of this region's power supply. I do know that the Deputy Mayor and yourself met with Hydro One, and that was a really good update. So I'm not sure if one of you has or can touch base with potentially the chamber president and update them about that. I don't know, just a suggestion. And then, you know, the TELUS tower is on there, and I'm still getting emails of residents upset about that. I'm not sure if anything else we can do, but and one more thing, one more thing with Union Water Supply System. Recently, after the announcement of the 500 homes in Essex, I started getting some complaints, and I think other councillors did too, of water pressure in the Gallows subdivision. So I don't know what to do next, or if anybody's, you know, what we're working on, if it's related to Union Water or related to, you know, the water towers, just something I think that should be on our radar with water supply issues in Ward 1. Thank you.
Councillor Van Dolen, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Essex, I'm the Essex rep on the Union Water Board of Management, and there's a bunch of I'm not sure if it's directly related, but it's likely that there's a whole bunch of maintenance work going on that has been leading to minor and intermittent reductions in water pressure. One of the water tower in Kingsville is out of commission, or it was for about 4 weeks. As we know, the Essex water tower was drained because it had to be inspected, and there were a couple of major valve failures which had to be replaced. The valves go bad just like kitchen taps go bad and have to be replaced. So this is probably, I mean, if it persists, I encourage anyone to contact me, and I'll check into it with Union Water, as is my role. But I think that these are just temporary and intermittent, and it has to do with regular work. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor Melange, go ahead.
And I've had a number of people calling as well, or mentioning to me that they've had lower water pressure than what they thought they should have. But I've just asked them to call the water department, get a hold of our manager of the water department, Andy Graff. He's very available. He'll call back. By having people call him and letting him know specifically what addresses are being affected, it gives him a better idea if there's a pattern developing, or if there's a certain section that has issues with water, maybe an underground water leak that's not allowing the water to get to homes in that certain area. So it's really good if people know that they should be getting a hold of our water department if they do have an issue. They can do that either by calling them directly, or you can list a call in and get a hold of extension 10 or 11 and put an order in. If you're more comfortable going on to a computer, go into our Essex Works program to try and put a service order in. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor. Is there any other correspondence you'd like to speak on? Councillor Guerin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment on 13.1.1.1, which is the province of Ontario's 3-step plan to guide sale and gradual reopening of the province. I find it very interesting how they're so vague with step 3 when it comes to what they're going to be allowing in terms of capacities for restaurants, bars, sports, recreation, and fitness facilities, meetings and event space, performing arts, cinemas, casinos and bingo halls, weddings. It goes on and on and on. I don't understand why they keep everything so close to the chest, or just continuing to make it up as they go along. But I just wanted to get that out there publicly, that I'm pretty perturbed at this rollout, specifically how vague step 3 is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Kevin, I seen you were in. Did you want to speak, Kevin? I seen you. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to echo Deputy Mayor's comments about putting in a work order. Anytime that any reduced pressure or any concerns related to drinking water are observed, they should be called in and notify the town. Specifically with Gallows or Townsview subdivision, we have received some complaints there. We have reviewed the water pressure and tested the water pressure in that area, which we have not identified any issues with it, and it actually is sufficient for that area. What I would maybe suggest is that those people who are recently moved into there also contact their builder, as they could have potentially private property issues as well. So continue to notify the town for any drinking water concerns, but any new build should also contact their builder.
For that, anybody else? Okay, thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 14, that the Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes from May 18th, 2021 be received and adopted as circulated.
Mover on this one, please. Councillor Vandendal and Councillor Bowman, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
Item 16, 2 items were added during adoption tonight as new business. 16.1 is a matter added by Councillor Verbeek, a request that council send a letter to our federal government to demand completion of the 94 calls to action put forth in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Did you want to speak on that, Councillor Verbeek, or we've got you read the letter?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, you know what? I think it speaks for itself. And there's Indigenous advocates, just pushing for this, and so should the rest of us. And so there has been progress made to realize some of the actions, but I think as of last night, when I was trying to get the newest information, there's like some 60 still in progress and 10 have been completed of the 94. And I think at this point it would, we should join the advocates and just push the federal government to get moving on these recommendations for the truth and reconciliation recommendations that have been just lingering there. So I would just ask for support in passing that.
To council, will we support that? All in favor of that support, please? Oh, I need a motion first. So the motion, you'll make the motion, Councillor Verbeek, and a seconder was Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor of that? It's carried. Thank you, Councillor, for bringing that forward.
Mr. Mayor, the second item that was added to new business this evening through adoption is an item added by the Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor is looking to speak to using community centers for heat relief during extreme heat alerts.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So I'll just speak to this a little bit. It's pretty self-explanatory, but right now our libraries are closed in our communities, and a lot of times our libraries were used as those centers for heat relief because they're air conditioned. And there's activities that you can do. You can be reading books or whatever you want to do. There's washroom facilities and so on. So we know for a fact that our libraries, other than Essex Center, will be closed the entire summer. I believe that Essex Center might be opening up come the beginning of August. So that would be the only one during extreme heat periods through this summer. So my motion that I'm looking for council to support is that we use community centers in all 4 wards for those without air conditioning, for cooling centers or stations during extreme heat advisories or alerts that are put out by the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit. Furthermore, that and I'm going to have I'm going to ask Director Sweet to talk a little bit about it. Him and I have already had the discussion earlier this week, or the end of last week. So he knew this was coming forward, and he's put together some information, I think. But perhaps, and him and I have not talked about this, was perhaps we can even have water available or something like that, bottled water for these people if they're coming in. So that's all that I have to say, and we'll see where it goes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Deputy Mayor Malash did approach me that he would bring this forward. So I did some research and talked to community service staff. So it's definitely possible. We would still promote our splash pads. We could have 4 of the centers, be it Colchester Community Center, McGregor Community Center, the Essex Sports Complex Shaheen Room, and the Harrow Community Room. So those could be available. A couple of things we would have to consider is there's got to be a process in place. So I've also been having the chief kind of look what other municipalities are doing. As the Deputy Mayor mentioned, I would recommend we still follow the Windsor Health Unit, their guide, which I did email out to council. And what Windsor does is when it either hits an extended heat warning or a heat warning is when they implement their process of opening their cooling centers. So I think we'd have to come back with some protocol, which we're already working on to have that. Once that's in place, I think it should be controlled similar to our emergency operating committee, because it kind of following an emergency plan falls under our climate change adaptation plan. So we want to formalize that in place. Just so council is aware though, to do this, there's a couple things. It is staff related. Basically the centers I mentioned, during the week, we have staff on site. After hours and weekends, we'd have to bring in staff. So hopefully we would check the weather and be able to have at least a day's notice, but it is dependent on getting staff, which should not be an issue. But also if that facility has a rental already in place, we then would not be able to open that as a cooling center. So we promote that also. We would monitor it. My past experience, my former municipality, a lot of people did not use them. So we would monitor it and bring those stats back to council. So we know that in the future. In terms of providing food and water, I'd recommend we didn't. We don't have a budget for that. We do have water fountains in those facilities that they could use, but that'd be an additional cost, and staff would have to monitor if we went with water or food, or could be other expectations that way. My past experience is basically you open up the facility, have the cooling center with chairs and tables in place, and a lot of times they've been only open also to 8 p.m. So it's not an all 24-hour thing. It's basically a 9 a.m. to an 8 p.m. time. So those are some quick thoughts, but key points is follow the health unit guidelines. We would have a protocol in place to implement it. And then as Councillor Bonnie's mentioned a few times, we'd work with our manager of communications, promote what's open and the times that they are open.
Thank the deputy mayor for bringing this forward. That it's a great idea, Deputy Mayor, and I'm sure it'll be used, especially you look at a day like today. You know, we're looking at 90-something degree weather with humidity well over 100. So yeah, it's I really thank you for bringing this forward. So any other questions, Councillor Verbeek? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank the Deputy Mayor for bringing it forward. And just a comment to Mr. Sweet. I think that the splash parks are a great offset for some of our residents, but we have residents at Isler Lodge does not have air conditioning. And if they don't have people like me picking them up and bringing them to my house where it's cold, yeah, they're pretty darn hot. And I know that splash pad is not an option for the people in McGregor to go and cool off in either. So I think that certainly this is a great idea, and I thank the Deputy Mayor for bringing it forward, and let's see if we can make this happen for the extended heat days.
Councillor Deputy Mayor, you had something further?
I just had a follow-up to Director Sweet. So what do you need from council to make this happen without it having to come back to council before you can put this in place?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think right now, if we could get direction from council that they support this initiative, then we can start working on a formal policy that we can bring back at a later date. But if we can get direction that in the meantime, if we hit one of these either extended heat warnings or heat warnings, that we're able to implement this process prior. But I think we still want a formal process to come back for future. But if I can get that direction on kind of the two, that to come back with a policy, but in the short term, that we can just go ahead if we reach one of those two warnings. And the other thing I just want to bring forward to council is we'd still have to, at the current times, follow the COVID restrictions. So that could be a factor, just reality what we're in right now.
Got it. And I liked all your ideas. It makes sense. There are water fountains there, so you don't need water. And I guess really I was just asking that just in case that was something you thought needed to be done. But also the hours that you were suggesting, what the hours you're suggesting are through times where it's the hottest parts of the day. So that makes total sense. We don't want people sleeping overnight at any one of these centers. That's a whole nother issue. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I support this idea wholeheartedly, and I think in the meantime, to Mr. Sweet's point, I think any of the costs that are incurred and before this is an actual plan that we've passed, we can use council contingency fund if we need to staff it, if we need to put people there, so you're not looking at your budget. There's unspent monies there, so we could finance it that way.
Or, Councillor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the rest of council. I think it's a great idea. I think, I mean, I'd rather have all the libraries open, but but as a second choice, yeah, it's great. If we do go with promoting this on social media, I think we should also be pushing the water refill stations that we have at our arenas, because sometimes people are out at parks and they have a refillable water bottle with them and they just want water. Like it's happened to myself and I've gone into the arena. So we have that tool there, you know. There's I think it's a Blue Dot movement where all of the water bottle stations are registered. I started doing some work and then I got sidetracked. But for example, the Heritage Hub at John R. Park Homestead has one too. So that's something in the future I'd love to see, you know, where in our municipality can you bring a refillable water bottle and get water, you know, without having to purchase something, because everywhere you usually have to purchase something. So a great idea. And I hope everybody stays cool as much as they can. Thank you.
Okay, so once again, I need a seconder on that motion for direction. Councillor Bjorkman, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much again, Deputy Mayor. If I may, under new business, I think I should bring this up under new business. And at this point here, I'd like to hand over the gavel to our Deputy Mayor, please, if you could take over here.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can do that.
Okay, I want to bring up an issue on traffic enforcement issues. I hate to bring this up, okay, but when I go on Facebook on Councillor Bondi posting, and I'll read it, discussion on traffic enforcement improvements not welcomed by Essex Mayor. There it is. Councillor Bondi, that's totally false. And you know it is. You know that I've had radar set up on the concession roads. Matter of fact, the Deputy Mayor and myself went out to Ferris Road a couple of weeks ago to some residents out there complain about speeding. I've had the sign up for speed. Councillor Bondi, you got to be very careful at what you're posting about me.
I have to call
Okay.
a point of order.
Why? What's the point? What's the point of order?
Yeah,
What's the point of order?
I'm directing the point of order to the Deputy Mayor who's chairing. Deputy Mayor, please ask the Mayor what his urgent and minor nature is to what he's bringing up for new business. It has to meet that definition. What is the purpose of this? What is the point?
Mr. Mayor, you've heard the question here. So what's the point of this, or what's the urgency in this?
Well, the point of this is, okay, a counselor is going around slamming people on Facebook, which is not true what she's posting. And I'll leave it at that. And she knows that I've been trying to get traffic control. She knows that. So I'm just stating a fact that stuff that's being posted on Facebook is a lie. Plain and simple. And I'll stop it right there. Done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Any further discussion?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pass it back to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment since you brought this up.
Go ahead.
I think the urgency in this is that it makes it look like as if Essex doesn't care about, when someone posts and something to that effect, it makes it sound like as if the entire town of Essex, other than that one councillor, is the only one concerned about speed within our town. So I think the mayor's just trying to point out that's an improper use of social media, because that's a false statement. Everyone on council cares about speeding in the town of Essex. One of the ideas that was asked to be discussed tonight that's not going to be discussed has been discussed in the past and is in the process of being put in place, I guess is what it is. So I understand what the mayor is saying, and I think that we all need to be careful about what we post on Facebook. We all have common ideas and common themes as to how we care about this community. And the safety of our community and the speeds that people are traveling at is something that we've all had many discussions on. I've been on council now for 17 years, and it's the one thing that I can say is consistent from term to term to term of council, that speeding is something that is of concern. So that's something that all of us care about. And the post led us to believe that there was only one person on council that thought maybe that was important. So I think that's what the mayor was trying to get across.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I know when I sat on the police service board in the past that this issue was brought forward before. And I know the chair of police service board, I spoke with her, and I know it's an issue that's on the table now for discussion. So, I mean, if she'd like to speak on it, I'd like to hear what she has to say. But I mean, I'm just going by a false statement that was made. And like you said, Deputy Mayor, it's an issue of all council, just not one. Thank you.
Item 17.1 on the agenda. The following notices of motion were first presented back at the June 21st meeting and are now being brought forward this evening for council's consideration. Under 17.1.1, that council have a discussion regarding barbecues at Town of Essex parks to determine what is and what is not permitted, as moved by Councillor Bondi and would require a seconder.
Seconder, okay, Deputy Mayor Malash seconds it. Go ahead, Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All I want is clarity so that when people send me pictures of barbecues on the beach or at the park, is I know exactly what the answer is, because I've heard before, oh, it's not allowed. The fire department's on its way out. Now I'm hearing, oh, it is allowed. So I just want an answer that is black and white, please, on record.
Doug, can you answer that? Go ahead.
Dear Mr. Mayor. So currently, I'll make a short answer a little longer. Our best practice is only to use gas barbecues. Charcoal can be used, but it's a safety hazard, right? People just dump it, it's a safety hazard. Currently, our parks bylaw 983, basically it says no person shall light any fire or use any fire in any park except in designated areas specifically provided by the municipality. Such fire shall be in approved containers designated for outdoor cooking. So with that, Colchester is considered a park that we allow picnics and barbecues. The beach is not. So our current signage for the beach signage has no barbecues are allowed on the beach. Colchester Park, they can have barbecues in the park. Past practice and what we recommend to anybody that contacts us is to use gas. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that kind of gives you what our parks bylaw says, and signage does say no barbecues on the beach.
Thank you. Perfect. That's it.
Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Yeah, so further to that conversation, I think it would be good if we would provide barrels that are specifically for dumping charcoal barbecues into, instead of having people dump the remains of their ash wherever it was that they were set up. If we had a designated spot, like some of the other parks have, with an orange barrel or something, then we can use that for the nitrogen content in our plantings next year. But there's got to be a way for us to control that refuse because people aren't taking the ash home with them.
Go ahead, Doug.
Just to update from what Councillor Bjorkman said, so Councillor's aware, some municipalities that do allow charcoal, they do have similar metal containers. I know Bell River Park down at the marina, that's what they use. They are chained to certain areas, but hopefully if people use them, it avoids that safety concern. So I can have our manager of parks facilities definitely look at that as an option.
Go ahead.
Thank you. To Director Sweet. So charcoal is allowed to be used. It's gas and charcoal. Barbecues are allowed to be able to use.
Mr. Mayor, our current parks bylaw does not prohibit either one of those. We just encourage people to use gas.
Okay, thank you.
else from council? Okay, thank you, Doug, for the input, and all in favor of the motion, please? It's carried.
So just, Mr. Mayor, the motion was that we just have a discussion, but should we also, I mean, I don't know, it could be too late now, but add that we investigate a barrel for the coal? Or that's just kind of understood, right?
No, that's, I would say that's understood, Counselor.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, second notice of motion, first presented back at June 21st, that council direct administration to invest in facilities to provide water for dogs at the Harrow Soccer Complex in absence of a dog park in Harrow, as moved by Councillor Bondi and would require a seconder.
Need a seconder for that one, please? Deputy Mayor Malash. Go ahead, Counselor.
It's just, it's pretty straightforward as well. You know, basically a lot of people, whether we like it or not, use the Harrow Soccer Complex for a dog park. Like if you look in, and they're pretty good about it. They're pretty good about picking up after their dogs, from what I hear and from what I see. And just wondering if it's financially feasible to get a quote there for a dog water bowl similar to the Essex Dog Park.
Okay, any other discussion? So we had a mover and a seconder. Councillor Verbeek. Go ahead.
Can we, before we vote, can we get like a cost analysis? I'm not saying that I don't support it, but if it's a huge financial burden on us, I don't necessarily, I mean, I was at the ball game yesterday and there were 3 dogs, including one of my, my niece's dog, and they all brought their own water like we always have at all the other parks. I'm pretty happy to hear that one of our parks does have water available for the dogs. I'm just wondering, before we decide, can't we know if it's a significant cost? Because dog owners typically bring their own water. I mean, my niece has this collapsible bowl and stuff. I just wonder, before we agree, can we get a price?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Counselor. I'll go right to Doug. Go ahead, Doug.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I do not have a price right now, so that was my recommendation. So basically, we do not have any public water fountains in any of our parks. A number of years ago, when West Nile was going around, the health unit had us remove all water fountains. So the only fountain that we actually have is actually for dogs in the permanent dog park in Essex Center, as Councillor Bondi mentioned. So to look at adding one at the Harrow Soccer Complex, we can definitely look at it. But my recommendation is, because we don't have a cost and what it would take, is we can look at quotes, but bring it back to council at 2020 budget deliberations and something we can put in the future. Based on the one, I know it had more work, but they were looking around 10,000 because we had a run line, so it wouldn't be that high. But I don't know the cost, so I couldn't even ballpark.
Okay, thank you, Doug. To the mover on this one here, would that be okay? We'll bring it back to the next budget and see what the cost is.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, with the mover and the seconder? That's good? Okay, thank you. All in favor of that recommendation, please? To bring it back to budget? Thank you.
The motion for consideration this evening, that council have a discussion and provide direction regarding the organics waste program that Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority is proposing, as moved by Councillor Verbeek and would require a seconder.
I need a seconder for Councillor Verbeek's. Deputy Mayor Malash. Go ahead, Councillor Verbeek.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll try and speak quickly because I want to catch council up to speed on what this is actually about. So the time's come that we have to address the removing organics from the waste. Fortunately for us, it's not like imminent, but it's coming, right? So the city hired a consultant team to put together a presentation for the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority. They like to be known as USWA now instead of authority. So I'll call them USWA. So USWA forwarded this was forwarded to you last night, just, so you can look at the presentation when time permits. So in the presentation, this, this consultation firm brought forth, presented by the city, some options. There was like 3 different sites, options. One was the land adjacent to our current landfill. So in the municipality of Essex at the landfill site. The other was the Lou Romano plant, and the other is a site that could be submitted and approved by proponents in the future. So I do want to state that the technologies they brought forward were a bio dryer, which even the stuff they presented and that I could find, the only places these are set are out like in the middle of nowhere, where there is no habitation, no homes, no residents, and an anaerobic digester, which releases even more methane than the landfill. So it would create the problem of having to be harnessed, which is all addressed in, in the report. We know from our warden and from the council reps in the area, in the municipality that do have one that's a fraction of minuscule size of what they would be wanting to put out here. The words were used that it smells like rotting corpses, and it has adverse and negative effects on the community around it for kilometers, the smell at times. So USWA it was to bring the presentation to us, all the councils in the county, by September. I'm not sure if that's still going to happen because of, you see, fortunately for us, the county council reps on the board voted to put the brakes on. They had numerous concerns. They had a list of reasons that they felt it was important to step back and request a peer review, which is now going to happen. So they felt that there was too much pressure applied to push this through. The cost just was so significant, and there were so many questions concerning it. And some had real concerns about the way that the costs that were portrayed.
Go ahead, Counselor. You're muted, Counselor. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to get through. I'm almost done. So the technologies that they brought forth in this presentation, the county councilors had significant concern about them because they weren't even the newest, greatest cutting edge that's available. And because what's happening is the city is on a very, very tight timeline. They have to move into the organics program. We are really fortunate in that we have we don't even have a date. Kingsville, Leamington, Kingsville has a loose date of the 29. So none of the county, the municipalities in the county are under this time restraint. But, okay, so I lost my place. Okay, the county councilors did speak. Some of them spoke about their concerns for the host municipality. What I wanted to say is that, and some of them were concerned that due diligence had not been done. And that actually at least 2 of them that I did call, because I called them all, were worried about the accuracy of some of the information. So now, fortunately, they've stepped back. There's going to be a peer review on it. But at this point, I do want to be clear about what my ask is and, bring it full circle. But I'm going to put the deputy mayor on the spot a little bit to help me with explaining to council the makeup of the authorities board and how it's made up, and why, when important things like this are coming to the table, the timing is important of who is sitting on the board at that point. And since you have been very clear at explaining it to me over the years. I wonder if you could fill the rest of the council in on how the board is made up and why timing is significant in these decisions.
Mr. Mayor,
Deputy Mayor. Go ahead.
Thank you. So there's always 9 members, a 9-member board on the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority. And 4 of them would be from either the county or the city, and the other 5 would be from the county or the city. In the first year of a 4-year term, the county has 5 members and the city has 4 members. Going into the second year of the term, there's an alternate switching of one counselor. That's the power goes from the county to the city. So then all of a sudden in the second year, the city has 5 counselors and the county has 4. In the third year, it switches back so that the county has 5 counselors on the board and the city has 4. Fourth year of the term, the city has 5 counselors and the county has 4 counselors. And quite typically, you'll see all the city councilors vote in a block and all of the county councilors vote in a block. That's typically how it works. Not in every instance, but on issues like this one, that's what you're probably going to see happen. Because this one truly affects the city of Windsor because of their urgency to have some kind of organics waste collection system put in place by, and Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's by 2023 or something like that. Because they're a larger urban center and they've been told by that they have to have this system in place earlier than smaller communities like Essex or Kingsville or so on. So the urgency here is that we have to have an answer on this and a vote on this board by at the latest December 31st, their last meeting in December of 2021. Because if this gets pushed off to January or later of 2022, the city of Windsor will have power, the power to make whatever they want to have happen. And that, I can guarantee you that organics waste center will be at in Ward 2 at the current landfill site. And it may not even be the best of systems that we could potentially put out there. And then we're going to have all kinds of complaints about the smell, because as Kim has suggested, and I've done some reading on this as well, there's not really any good system in collecting. There might be something coming that would be much more able to handle rotting materials to control the smells that are naturally given off by this sort of a collection, but they're not here yet. And it would be in our interest, best interest, to try and have this postponed. So if you have an opportunity to talk to, there's only 5 counselors right now that are on county council that are on this board. And off the top of my head, the only one I can think of right now is Mark Bondy for sure. But there are 5 of us from county council that are on that board. If you have an opportunity to talk to any of them, they'll tell you that they're not in favor of moving forward on this. But if you do have a chance to talk to any of them, it may be worthwhile saying that Essex, from your view, does not want to have this at this current time. So they can vote on it. They can vote on not having it before the end of this current calendar year. And they're not allowed to bring it up again until the following term. If they vote no in this term of council, they cannot bring it up again until January of 2023. And then the county will have power again to determine, we'll have 5 councillors on it. And not that all city councillors may want to be on board, or you may not have county councillors that are opposed, but I'm just saying that's the way it is right now.
Thanks for helping me clarify that. I'd just like to wrap up and then open it to the floor, and then we can vote on what my specific ask is. So the landfill committee, the liaison committee, which represent the residents that live in close proximity to the current landfill, because they host all of the trash from the city and the county and all of the yard waste with all of the open, for various reasons, they have sent a letter and it's been received by authority, that they do not want our regional landfill to host any of the organics programs that are decided on. So we will have the opportunity to decide as a council, because we will have to. Windsor has to get come in front of all of the councils and county council and get a buy-in or buy-out per council. And we may choose to buy in, but my request tonight would be that we as a council send a letter to county council, who already know because I spoke to them all, but I'm hoping the letter, we can still send an official letter to and the Windsor Essex Solid Waste Authority saying, please put your focus on some of these other potential sites, because Essex does not want to host this organics program. If it does, whatever the decision on the style or the technology they go with. Now, there's many adverse effects that you can already imagine, but the ones that stand out the most for me are, this technology is a heavy draw on water use and power use. And I think we as a municipality need to focus on making sure that our water and our power are significant for the current needs and the future needs of our municipality, and not say, okay, we are going to host this this organics program that is known to have a significant water and power draw. The trucks on the roads, we just talked about the new work on Walker Road and the new work on the Arnold Town line. We would be instantly adding a whole ton of new trucks to our roadways if we hosted it out here. The sites, I think that if we say that, if we send them a letter, stop looking at regional landfill as a potential site, they're going to stop focusing on it. Because if you look at the reports, you'll see every one of them just kind of checks our land site checks off every box to be the number one choice for various reasons. The Lou Romano, and they may have a new one if someone has some property and comes forward and says use this property, that may be ideal. But right now they're really eyeballing our site, and I'm going to ask council to support that we send a letter, just say, you know what, we're not interested in hosting this. We're taking care of everybody's yard waste. We're taking care of everybody's garbage here. We look somewhere else for the organics. Also, we aren't under any timeline because we're a small municipality. We don't have the province breathing down our back saying we got to get the organics waste. And on a side note, I would like to see us just continue to collect the gas. We have other ways to deal with that methane over at the landfill. We could harness that gas from the waste, but that's a conversation for another day. Anyway, I'd like to open it up, and that's the summary of my ask tonight.
Okay, that Councillor Verbeek, that's your direction to send that letter. So did we had a seconder, didn't we? Okay, so all in favor of that?
Oh, hold on.
No, hold on. Was there any other discussion? No. Councillor Bowman.
Yes, I think a lot needs to be done from our standpoint. I'm not sure our agreement for hosting the landfill site in the first place would encompass this type of operation. I think we had to make some adjustments when we did the yard waste right around the time of amalgamation. And I would think maybe we should maybe retain Mr. Mullins, the legal guru who put that agreement in place in the first place, to look at what's happening and what's taking place here. I would think they should be coming to us first before they start changing what they're doing over there. And I would think probably Mr. Mullins would be the individual that have the most insight into it. And if you remember back in the early 2000s, when it was reviewed the last time and we looked at the agreement, we found that the landfill group were not paying us the appropriate amounts of dollars for the tonnage going in because it had a clause in it to change at certain times. And that was never instated. So we, received quite a bit more money from that. This is a different use for that facility and site. I think it probably changes how this agreement should be looked at. So I think that needs to be looked at as well. Obviously, we need to send something to the county and the landfill to say, we have concerns about this, much as Kim has, instigated. And I know I had the privilege of sitting on the landfill board once for a very short period of time, but I certainly got the feeling of how the back and forth between the county and the city, that struggle went from time to time. And Richard's right. It's block voting which county or city wins it, unless it's a meaningless issue. But it really goes that way. So I think this requires some really close scrutiny on our part, because it's going to be in our backyard, and and it may came down. The province will actually mandate that that's where it goes if there's enough fighting going on. But at least we want to get the best service that's over there that's possible if it does end up. So, but I think we need to be proactive on this. Thank you.
Go ahead, Chris. You wanted to speak on this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, well, I fully support sending the letter, but I think our residents should know about some other facts about this. And what's happening is that the city's trying to railroad the whole region into spending $200 million plus on a plan to basically recycle potato peelings, which is a gigantic amount of money. And a lot of people don't think it's worth it. We have a landfill that's perfectly capable of handling those potato peelings for the next half century. So, I mean, there's a divergence here between how people want us to see, want to see us handle waste, but that's yet another reason that 200 million plus. I mean, once government gets involved, it'll be $250 million. The 7 communities of Essex County will be on the hook for half of that. That's as much as we're supposed to spend on the new hospital, for Christ's sakes. Oh, pardon me. It's a crazy amount of money, and I'm fully in favor of sending the letter and delaying this any way we can.
I was going to go to our CEO when I said Chris, but that's okay. That's good. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Worship. Just to clarify a couple of points and I guess dovetail off of Councillor Verbeek's points. I think some of the key points here are nothing's been agreed on, nothing's been decided on, nothing's been set in motion, as she noted. Your county reps on the useful board definitely pushed back at the last meeting and definitely said, slow down. We need to assess all the costs. We need to see what are the impacts if we decide to go in. Is there an option of not going in now, but then coming in 10 years when we need to come in? So those are a couple of things, and that's why they push back for that peer review. Following that peer review, I've been pushing, I was pushing to have the landfill liaison committee as part of these board meetings. I've been pushing to have a representative from USWA or USWA and the consultant to come back and educate this council on this report and the options and the outcomes. And all that has to happen before this council should even decide making a decision or not. And that definitely what was pushed back at the board level. We're not the experts here. I'm not the expert in this. We need them to come and present this and show you those options. The other thing is all the organics right now is going to the landfill. So it's not additional, right? It's what would be diverted. So yes, the landfill is taking that. So those things to consider as well. A secondary part of this is the greenhouse gas reduction emission, which falls into our climate adaptation and the regional adaptation or climate policy as well. So there's a couple things happening, and that's why I think it's really prudent to let the USWA board peer review it. Once they peer review it and get the results from that, push back and have them come and present to this council, and then you can make an informed decision on what you want to see happen. The other thing I definitely agree with, as the host municipality, we do need some special attention in terms of whether that's, first information or first time, we get presented first, something that to that respect. And maybe that's the push to the USWA board is we're the host municipality. A lot of those recommendations impact us as the host municipality. You need to come here and talk to us, right? And then on the flip side of that, when you start thinking about financials and tipping fees, we do, as Councillor Bowman noted, we do get those tipping fees as the host municipality, diverting organics, potentially up to 30% of that. There's potential impacts to the municipality that way as well. So you guys are right. There's a lot of questions unanswered. There's a lot of information that needs to be asked to this council. But I think the process of letting that peer review go, having them come back, having a full-on discussion with the people that can answer all your questions about the wheres, the whens, the hows, and the whats, then you guys can make a decision on as a council, what you want to do in, out, in 10 years, whatnot.
So in that point there, Councillor Verbeek, what's your direction?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So before we vote, I guess I get to just kind of wrap it up. I want to thank Councillor Vanderdolen for saying some of the things that I was a little too timid to put out there, because he did nail some important points there that I was a little timid about. I wanted to clear up for Councillor Bowman that it is not the landfill site that they're looking at. As they did, they've done, it's done. They hired the consultant. The proposal's there as it sits. The county councilors have now stepped back and want a peer review of it. So that is why in my many discussions, it became very apparent that it was important for us as a council to the host, to the landfill, that we come forward right now while they're going back to the drawing board and slowing things down prior to bringing it forward to everybody. And they're citing that we tell them, look harder at these other locations because we aren't interested in hosting it here. And as a matter of fact, the other point that Councillor Vanderdolen touched on was that we may never have to worry about it. We are sending our organics to the site. And if in 15 years from now, the province says, okay, Town of Essex, you guys do have to deal with, you have to source separate, and we want you to take your organics out of the waste. We will be able to deal with it here as well, and maybe with some newer technology. Or we may choose to go regionally when they come forward, because they do have to come to us sometime in the fall and say, these are the things, these are the options. And at that point, we as a council, as the part the CAO got right was that we do have to decide as a council, are we in or are we out? And that's key. And we want to do that before it goes into the December, the term ends. But for tonight, I'm asking council that we send a strong letter to the Solid Waste Authority and to council saying, you know what, just stop looking at us as a potential site, because we do host all the garbage and we do host all the yard waste, and we are under no mandate to separate our organics, which, by the way, the study showed that there's a really good chance this big, very overpriced, expensive program is going to go into place, and residents aren't going to take the potato peels out of the garbage anyway. So I just feel like my request tonight was fellow councilors to just speak up and say, you know what, you guys thank you to take your step back and look at different options, because our county councilors stood up and said, you got two options, two technologies on the table, and there's a lot of other ones out there. We're gonna, we have to kind of step back and look at more. And I feel like if we get ahead of it now, then we don't have that big fight that Councillor Bowman said we may have in the future. We've been up front from day one and said, you know what, there's lots of other options. Don't look here. That was the point of my request for the letter.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Guerin.
Sorry, through you, Chair, to Councillor Verbeek. So are you just trying to get this figured out here? Are you opposed to the entire process, or are you opposed to the technology they've brought forward?
Actually, Councillor Verbeek, neither of those things I'm opposed to. They haven't figured out which technology they're going to go with, and I'm not necessarily opposed to, you know, at some point we should be taking our organics out of the waste. That it's this significant, and I think Councillor Vanderdolen did name the price. It's somewhere in there. It was repeated by a lot of the councillors at the last two meetings. It's like $200 million or something that's going to be divided up, because Windsor's under a tight timeline to get, they have to have a program in place. And they can look at the Romano plant. They can look at a lot of other sites. My request is that, because what I'm opposed to is hosting it in our municipality, Councillor Guerin, because we don't know what kind of draw it's going to be on our water, and we need to make sure our water supply is good for now and later. We don't know what kind of draw it's going to be on our hydro, and we do know that the technologies they're looking at right now are significant draw on both those resources. So I just want us to get ahead of it and say, you know what, we don't want a big fight in the future. We're telling you right now, we may or may not buy in. Once the solid waste authority and county council, once they come to us and they have this presentation, every single municipality is going to have to come together and vote. We're in or we're out. And if you do watch one of the presentations I sent you last night, that's what it says at the end. Where are we at? Eventually, we're going to just have to say each municipality, we're in or we're out. At that point, we can look at that again as a team. But right now, I think we should, I'm asking that we just send the letter and say, you know what, look closer at these other sites, because they're all feasible, but we aren't.
Thank you, Councillor, for that. So that's your direction. Okay, Councillor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Verbeek. I've been trying to follow this file as much as I can, but Windsor's crisis is not our crisis. And I think if we don't stand up right now and send that letter, then by default, it's going to be back at us. They're going to keep knocking on our door. So we send them, I don't want to send them on a wild goose chase. I want to be very clear with them saying, hey, look at alternative sites. And I understand where the CAO is going, but I think that's wasting time. And I don't want to waste time right now. I don't want to waste energy. I don't want them to thoroughly vet our site as a feasible site when we're frankly not willing to host at this point. So I wholeheartedly support the letter. I wholeheartedly support getting organics out of the landfill as well. You know, I compost here at my house. Not every potato peel makes it in there, but I do try. So I will be supporting this letter, and I also would like a recorded vote, please.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Kim, for bringing this forward. I must admit, I am new to this issue, and one of the things that I have heard, and I did some reading, is a lot of the argument right now is driven by fear. It's this fear of it's going to smell, it's going to be lots of trucks, it's going to be, those trucks are already coming with the, it's just in the same truck. Now they're going to have a separate truck, but the same number of trucks, it's the same tonnage is going to keep coming out to the landfill. There is a potential for us to reap a benefit from this through tipping fees, through a different way of doing things. Right now, what I'm hearing from this report and from everyone is this fear of this could be awful, but I haven't heard all the facts that balance out what's necessary. And here's what could be the benefits from it. I feel for the residents around the landfill. My friends live there too, so their fear is real. They've experienced, what happens there firsthand. But I don't have enough information on this. Now, I'm all in favor of saying we want you to look at the other sites, but to come out right now with the amount of information that we have as a council to say, I'm 100% against this. I never want to see this in my area. I can't do that because I don't have that kind of evidence. I'd be happy to support saying, please look at these other spots. Please look at these newer ways of doing things. But right now, at this moment, I won't support it only because I don't have enough information to do that. If we want to go forward with this, we need to have them come to us and give us the information. Or for me, I need that information in order to say I stand on this side of this line. As it is right now, I don't have that line to stand behind.
Your direction again, Counselor.
I think I have it, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, that we send a letter to the Solid Waste Authority and to also CC the county council that at this point Essex does not want to host an organics program if and when it comes this way. So
Okay,
that they continue to search other sites, focus on the other sites that they already have shortlisted.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Counselor. We had a seconder. Was there?
Meloche, yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a recorded
Deputy
vote.
Mayor Meloche. So this is a recorded vote, so I'll go to Rob.
So just firstly, for clarification, I just want to confirm that I have the proposed wording that the town sent a letter to County Council and the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority asking for their consideration of other alternative sites and not the Town of Essex regional land site with respect to or pertaining to the host organics programs.
Yeah.
That's okay. So we do have a requested vote on that motion as requested by Councillor Bondi. Oh, I'm sorry.
Counselor Bowman, go ahead.
Yeah, he said on the regional land site, I think there was some talk that would be next to the regional land site. That should probably be addressed as well.
Thank you, Councillor
that
Bowman. They're looking at the adjacent land. So the Solid Waste Authority owns all kinds of property around it wouldn't be on the footprint of the landfill. It's actually right adjacent to it on some of the much property they own around it.
Yeah. Thank you, Counselor.
Okay. So with that correction noted, then on the recorded vote, Councillor Bondi, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Vanderdolen, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Bowman, how do you vote?
Support.
Mayor Snively, how do you vote?
Support.
Deputy Mayor Meloche, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Guerin, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Verbeek, how do you vote?
Support.
And Councillor Bjorkman, how do you vote?
Opposed.
With a recorded vote of 7 in support and 1 opposed, the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our last notice of motion for council's consideration this evening is 17.1.4, that council direct administration to install a turtle/snake crossing sign on Eiler Road, as moved by Councillor Bondi and would require a seconder.
Counselor Verbeek, you're second that? You're going to second that? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Counselor Bondi.
It's just self-explanatory. There is one on County Road 50, but Eiler Road, right where, I don't even know, across from John R. Park Homestead, whatever that creek is, the marsh.
Fox Creek.
Fox Creek, okay. So there is a resident has brought it up to my attention, and we've talked about it at the Youth Action Committee Zoom meeting. So just wondering if we could get a turtle and snake crossing sign there, please.
I'll open up to any discussion from council. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a quick comment. The town's really not the sole authority for species at risk or designating areas that are vulnerable for wildlife crossing roadways. I think to avoid the potential for sign pollution or a perceived risk when there may not be, I would suggest that council maybe direct administration to first work in partnership with the Conservation Authority to determine if there's any part of the Isler or specifically this section, Fox Creek, to determine if it is a vulnerable area for crossing turtles. I think too, as well, it's probably important to note that although it's a noble initiative and a noble request, there is a significant cost to installing signs and eventually replacing those signs. So it's something that council also needs to consider.
Councillor Bondi, I'll give it back to you. Are you in favor of that?
Sure, that's okay. I mean, I think we're adding more of a cost by all of this networking, more things we have to do when it could just, I know, say there's a $300 cost to putting up the sign. Now we're going to make it $6 by spending more staff time talking to more staff on the other end. But hey, I get it. It's a municipality. I get there's red tape. The reason why turtles are something that we should talk about and try to work together is due to degradation, right? We are building and we are developing, and just awareness. I've ran over a turtle before, and it was like the most awful experience. And just talking about it and having those eyes and ears on the road, it's a windy road at the bottom there and it turns. I pay attention when I go into Amherstburg now and I see the turtle signs, I'm like looking at the road. On Front Road 2 weeks ago, there was a snapping turtle. I pulled over, stopped, and it's 4 lanes, thank goodness. And I stopped the traffic, and a 78-year-old man, because I wasn't going to pick up the snapping turtle, but a 78-year-old man carried it down the bluff in the direction it was going, because I'm so aware of it now. We have to have people aware of it, or frankly, we're going to lose all of our turtle species one day, because no provincial body spends money studying turtles, because you don't have money to study turtles. So I just think the whole, we're going to talk to this, and we're not the provincial authority is red tape, but if it's whatever I got to do to get a sign, I hope that at the end of the day, we get a sign. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I know in the past, right in front of Deputy Mayor Malash's boys' place, I stopped and picked up a snapping turtle, put it in the ditch right beside his boy's house. So, and same with fox snakes. If I see a fox snake on the road, I'll stop, pick it up and put it in the field. So no, I agree with you. Those are species at risk. So anyways, okay. Any other further discussion on this one here? Okay. Thank you, Councillor, for bringing that forward. All in favor of doing this? It's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
17.2.1 is a notice of motion that's being presented only this evening and will be brought forward for council's consideration at the July 19th meeting. That council requests that ELK Energy's board meeting minutes be open to council and/or the asset management plan be shared with council, and that town council requests the chair of ELK Energy to raise this request at the next scheduled meeting. As moved by Councillor Bondi, and again, back for council's consideration at the July 19th meeting. Any reports and announcements from council members this evening?
Councillor Bowman, do you have anything? Councillor Bondi, do you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to touch on speeding, I have been looking at the police service board meeting minutes. So if somebody can point me in the direction where traffic enhancement has been discussed, then I can let people know that are asking me, because I like to do my job in a really transparent way. And I can't see anywhere in the police service board minutes that it's been discussed. So thank you.
Counselor Bjorkman, anything?
Yes, thank you. Through you, your worship, just announced tonight, it just ended, but Tune Up the Parks has begun again. So tonight in Colchester, there was a band in the park, and on Wednesday, we will have Emerson Amelia at the Essex Heritage Gardens. So every Monday night through the summer at 7 o'clock in Colchester at Jackson Park, and every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock at Heritage Gardens Park. Trip the Parks is back, so it's a great way to get out, see friends, and listen to some music and support our local artists. So just to encourage people to get out and take part in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Malash, do you have anything?
Yes, just one thing. I know Blimey's is not new in the town of Essex, but new in Essex Center. And just want to give a shout out, welcome them to the community. And take the opportunity to go out there and check it out. They've got a lot of cool things in there. And I know my wife stopped in there today because there's a lot of cool things sitting on my kitchen counter right now. And welcome to Pizza Hut in Harrow as well, taking up a space that had no storefront there previously. So that's great.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Verbeek, do you have anything?
I actually do. Sorry, as if I haven't spoken up tonight. Thanks through you, Mr. Mayor. I have two announcements, but I also, just in response to Councillor Bondi, just briefly, as we've discussed in messaging and emails, only recently has our police service board started putting actual conversations into the minutes, and you're aware of that because I had requested that start happening. It's not there, but as I did say, there's multiple conversations going on with the upper levels of our current municipal government and the police force, and it's open to the public as all our police service board meetings are. So yes, that information is just being accumulated and coming forth. Also, my big announcement is that the Yellow Jackets played yesterday, our Pee Wee travel baseball team. What an awesome event. Our past Mayor McDermott and his quartet sang Let Us All and Take Me Out to the Ball Game. It was great to have the whole community together cheering on our guys, and the opportunities there this Thursday at 6 o'clock to come out and support them again. I have a little statement, a public service statement I wanted to read. I prepared it last night after I called members of my police service board. It's a little awkward after that new business session there, but I'm still going to read it as I wrote it yesterday afternoon. We often remind our youth about, but I guess today is a good time to remind our Essex residents that we can't always believe everything that we read on Facebook. Some posts may be calculated lies to make things seem something that they are not. Well thought out mistruths to have an unnecessary rally effect create divide. We can all fall into a habit of believing everything shared if it comes from a trusted source. And we have to be careful not to do that. It's just a reminder that everything on Facebook is not always factual. But go Jackets, go. Stop by the park Thursday if you can.
Councillor Van Andelen, do you have anything?
Not this week, thanks.
Okay, I think the last one, Councillor Guerin, do you have anything?
Yeah, through you, just a comment. Yeah, like Councilor B said, I did see some games going on this weekend. It was encouraging to see the kids finally out there being able to participate and compete rather than just hit the ball by themselves down at the ball diamond. So it's great to see. And also it's good to see the people supporting our businesses. And I see a lot of activity uptown. A lot of people enjoying a cold one and lunch down at the local restaurants and bars. So it's encouraging all the way around.
Thank you, Councillor. I only have one thing, and I just found out that Greg Horkey's holding his derby this weekend on Saturday, and he's holding it to be anywhere from 50 to 60 boats this year here. It's a lot smaller, so if you know anybody that wants to enter, it's $150 per boat, and I think it starts at Saturday. I'm not sure if Counselor Bjorkman, do you know what time they're going to start? Any idea? Have you heard? No, I think it's 6 o'clock. It'll be 6 or 6:30 anyway. Just to let the public know if anybody's interested, get a hold of Greg. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On to item 19, bylaws. Bylaw 2037, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings from the June 20 meeting for third reading this evening.
Have a mover on this bylaw, please. Counselor Bowman and Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? Carrie? A mover for this one, please. Counselor Bowman and Counselor Bjorkman. All in favor? Carrie?
Readings this evening is bylaw 2042, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this July 5th, 2021 regular council meeting.
Mover, please. Counselor Bjorkman and Counselor Vanendel. All in favor? It's carried. Now I'll need a motion to adjourn. Counselor Verbeek and Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? Have a great evening and a nice week.